Please tell us about Lost.
Lost, I wrote the piece Lost for Ruth and myself last year, but before that it was a series of pieces of music written for a theatre company, an aerial theatre company, and where all the performers were up in the air, a long way up in the air, and I wrote this one. I developed this music from that original concept. To be lost, perduto in Italiano, doesn't just refer to being lost geographically. It's lost politically, morally, just feeling like you are lost in some way. Sometimes to get through the day, I feel lost. So the notion of lost is what the piece is about. And sometimes it's good to embrace that and be happy in being lost.
Which are your source of inspiration?
I like both classical music, jazz, contemporary music, Bach to Stravinsky to Miles Davis to pop music, all sorts of music, and it all feeds into me, I suppose, in some way, my experiences. So I listen at the moment. I listen to a lot of Frank Sinatra. I also listen to some Sibelius recently, but it changes constantly.
Which do you think is your masterpiece, or something you think of as a masterpiece?
It's not really for me to say what my masterpiece is, but the pieces which I like of other people, I love Stravinsky. I love Stravinsky's. I first heard Stravinsky's Rite of Spring when I was 11 years old, and I just thought it was amazing, the most marvellous piece that I'd never heard anything like it, so that was very inspirational. Also a piece by Steve Reich called Piano Phase, which I'd never heard anything like that before. So there's times in life where you hear something you've never heard before, and it's a magical moment. I also have that with dance. I go and see a dance performance, and you see something you've never seen before, and it makes me want to dance. And those are the fantastic things. For me, I like to create. I like to create in music because music is what I do. But I would always be. I'm a creative person, so I love just making things up, whatever it is. But I like to create new things all the time. I don't want to do something which has been done before.
Lost is a multimedia work in which there is also videos by the video artist Ryan Chop. How did his sequences of images dialogue with your music?
Ruth and I and Ryan spent a lot of time talking to each other about the meaning of being lost and loss. I also lost my father last year, so that feeds into how you create. And Ryan and Ruth and I discussed the possibilities. We discussed certain images which we thought would go with certain bits of music, certain areas of music. And there's a lot of repetition in them and very subtle changes. So you don't see things happening. You see little things changing. But much of the time things remain as they are, just very subtly things change. That works with the performance, because if it was too strong, if the images were too strong, you'd be looking at the images all the time and you wouldn't be thinking about what we're doing on stage. So it was a balance, balancio, between looking at the video and looking at us as performers.
You also wrote pieces inspired by sports, I know, maybe?
Si.
And especially football players. If I am correct, also Totti.
Totti, Francesco Totti, sì.
The Italian footballer.
Yes, yes. I'm a great. I love sport. I like watching football. I like watching tennis. And the first piece that I wrote, which was inspired, if you like, by sport, was a piece called Graf, about the tennis player Steffi Graf. And I took a game, a specific game of tennis, in which the power shifted between Sanchez Vicario and her, and it changed in the course of the game. And I found this very It worked musically. It worked musically because there was a shift, a change of power, and suddenly it developed into something different. And I fed that into the piece of music.
What about creative process?
Quite often I start by writing in words what I want to do in a piece of music. It's very easy to get distracted by listening to nice sounds, playing the piano, playing nice sounds and thinking, oh, this sounds wonderful. But actually, for me, it's very useful to always keep going back to the original idea. And I always have to start from the original idea and then come back to it and make sure that I haven't gone too far away, that I haven't decided, that I haven't got lost somewhere en route, and I have to drag myself back. So having something written down is very useful. I use the piano, I use a desk with no piano, I use a computer, I use all sorts of different ways of composing. But most of it is just in here rather than... It is affected by what I'm doing at the time, by what I'm reading. If I'm reading a book about certain things, then that will affect perhaps what I'm doing. It'll be affected by the politics of the day, the news, the things which I experience through the day, like everybody would experience.
Where and when it all began for you and your relationship with music?
I started playing the piano when I was 6. My mother was a piano teacher, and I played, but I kept giving up the piano. I got bored. I got bored with playing scales after scales, so I got bored. What I wanted to do, I always wanted to do, was just make up things on the piano, improvise. And I used to sit down at the piano and not practice the piano, but make up other things. So it started from there. And then when I got to play a little bit better, I played a piece by Beethoven called Moonlight Sonata. And I thought I could do it better than Beethoven. So I rewrote it with some jazz chords and slightly different, because I was very arrogant at that time. So I thought I could do it better. So it sort of started very early, and I will always compose, I think.
What about your artistic and personal relationship with Ruth?
Oh, well, it's fantastic because Ruth and I are together anyway. But it's wonderful working with Ruth because she can be very honest with me. She says, I will give Ruth some music. She goes away for a couple of days, and she'll look at it. She'll swear a lot. She'll say it's impossible, and then she will come up with a good way around it, a good solution to the problems which I've set her, if you like. And so it's a very good working relationship because there's honesty, and also because I don't play the harp. I come up with things which are different for the harp. So some things are impossible. So I have to stop and go back a little bit.
Ruth Wall, a wonderful harpist, will play a classical harp and a Celtic harp. How is that possible to play contemporary music with a Celtic harp?
It's a good question. The medieval harp that I play is a Gaelic wire-strung harp. It comes from Scotland, from the west coast of Scotland and Ireland as well. And most of the music is not written down anyway. Even the medieval music, it was passed down orally. It was an oral tradition. So we always have to look for a way to find the music as musicians. So I suppose it's not that much different from me searching for the old music. I look into the composers that I like, listen to some pieces and think whether it would work in the key or whether I can make an arrangement for the instrument. But it's a very different technique from the concert harp, from the big harp, because you play with the nails, you play, these strings are made of silver and bronze, silver and brass, so you pluck with the nail and then you have to stop the sound as well. So there's a lot of things to consider.
How did you start playing the harp? Why the harp?
I grew up in the Highlands in the north of Scotland, and there was a possibility to rent a harp when I was little. So I think my parents could tell I was musical, and I started on piano. And I used to dance a lot after the pipe band, you know, the cornemus, the bagpipes, and Then they rented me a harp for about a year or two, and then I got good at it, and they bought a little one, just like a little, yeah.
What about last and this concert you're going to play?
Oh, yeah. So Graham wrote Lost a couple of years ago and has been adapting it ever since, changing it so that he added in the Moog synthesizer and the other sounds that we use. It's a bit of a journey. The score is 12 different pieces, which are all quite dark. They're quite moody. And there's a lot of sort of minimalist rhythms involved, quite lush harmonies, jazz harmonies. Yeah, it's a great piece to play.